Managers aren't allowed to tell me to use their parking space when they're off. Alright then. So this happened a good 6 years ago now. I was just starting my IT career, so I was a basic level 1 desktop engineer for a large financial company. My team consisted of me, a level 2 engineer and 3 managers, 1 for data, 1 for people and 1 overall manager. Parking in town was either expensive or impossible, and while management and supervisors got parking spaces in the huge multi-story next to the office, other staff members didn't get one and either had to pay the very expensive parking fees or park far away and walk. Being on a low entry-level salary, I opted to walk the 30 minutes into town, and often got sick due to bad weather. The level 2 guy lived a 5-minute walk from the office and didn't own a car. When any of the managers were off, they offered their parking space to me so that I wouldn't have to walk, which was very nice of them and greatly appreciated as it was saving me money too. One day, I got called into HR because somebody saw me coming out of the multi-story and got jealous and asked why I get a space and they don't. This HR manager was incredibly condescending and talked to me like I was a literal child with lines like, "Back when I was your age, I thought the world owed me everything too," which is absolutely not my attitude, but sure, go off on one like you know me. She said it wasn't fair on the level 2 guy because he might want the space too. She wouldn't listen when I said he didn't drive and even said to me he didn't want it after I asked if he was okay with me using the space. At the end of the day, I went into the management office and we were chatting about the day as we usually did, and I told them about the HR meeting and said they weren't allowed to let me use their space anymore. The data manager then had a genius MC suggestion. She was a very selfless soul who sacrificed much of her time to help other people, and this situation rubbed her the wrong way and she wanted to do something out of spite. She said that whenever any of them were on holiday, they'd just tell me that their parking space will be empty for the duration, not specifically that I can use it, which is what we were told not to do from HR. So the next time they were on holiday, I parked in their space, and after a few days, somebody else got jealous and tattled to HR again. I was dragged into a meeting and asked why I was still using their space. I said that I just took a chance on an empty space I found in the multi-story. They were rented, not pay and display. She went and asked the data manager when she was back in if she said I could use the space, to which she said, "No, I just said goodbye before I went on holiday for 2 weeks." HR then told her I was in her space in her absence and asked her if she wanted to raise a complaint against me. She said, "No thanks, I wasn't using it anyway." Their hands were tied and there was nothing they could do to prevent me from using the spaces, as they're allocated privately to the individuals for use even outside of office hours and only reclaimed when they leave. Too long did not read. My old data manager is a delightful human being and HR was a bitter old crow. Edit. Alright, this blew up a lot more than I'd expected, so I'm going to address a few of the common questions, comments. Not in the US, so I couldn't claim back parking as business expenses against taxes. Lot of people talking about not being able to get sick from bad weather. Really, that's the part you focus on. It was by far my worst year of sickness. Maybe it was the exposure to other people on my walk. IDK, I'm in IT, not a doctor, but it definitely had an effect. Our contract stated that any perk, parking included, was not to be delegated to anybody else, including friends, family or other staff members, so yes, HR had the power to question this and put a stop to it. Until we found a loophole, of course. I'm now well aware of how fucked it was to have 2 engineers and 3 managers, but honestly didn't think much of it at the time because it was my first job and I had no idea how actual businesses were structured other than what I was taught in GCSE business studies. Is HR just really bored? Do they need a puzzle or a crossword to do? Perhaps they can find Waldo and give him a written warning. Everyone's talking about but a team with 3 managers for 2 engineers. People are too old to be this damn petty. Why is HR everywhere so consistently awful? One place I worked had a similar situation with parking for remote desktop techs. Walking to the office with another tech returning from a deployment, they were robbed at gunpoint of the laptop bags, toolkits, and about a dozen new PCs back when they cost $1,000 a piece. Management went crazy, but there was video of the robbery and the cops said there was a problem and suggested letting people carrying close to $20,000 in company assets have parking in the attached garage. No parking provided. Happened again to another tech. Someone on another forum used to work at a major company, think it was ICI, and shares a story. At that company, the quality of your office was determined by your salary scale, org chart ranking. To simplify, let's compare 3 ranks and their carpeting. Lower rank got no carpet. Middle rank got a partial carpet. Higher rank got fitted, wall-to-wall carpet. One day, a middle-ranked employee was moved into a higher-rank office with wall-to-wall carpet. Later that day someone from facilities came out and tucked about 7.5 centimeters of carpet in around the entire office. Employee asks what's going on. Your middle rank, your office isn't allowed a fitted carpet. It really just sounds to me like the HR person was forced to get involved because Moaning Myrtle complained. I doubt they would have bothered if Moaning Myrtle hadn't complained. But what's the characteristic of Moaning Myrtle? Moaning Myrtle always complains. Pro tip: if you're in the States, save all paid parking receipts and claim that on your taxes as a business expense. If there is no alternative to paid parking, then it's part of job expenses. Surprised HR person herself wasn't the victim of some maliciousness. I'm sure HR has dozens of sex harassment complaints they can be focusing on rather than this shit. Honestly, the manager should have had a meeting with HR and straightened that the F out. That's ridiculous. In my very biased and limited experience, people who typically go into HR are kind of like the people who become cops but without a hard-on for guns and physical violence. They're people who like power, people who love rules and enforcing them. They're not there to help employees or the betterment of the company, they're there to monitor, control and punish. They'll follow rules without stopping to think about whether it's fair, useful or appropriate, just because it's the rule. They'll live by their stats, even going so far as gaming the system so they look good, without thinking about whether these stats are relevant at all or the consequences of basing their beloved rules on these stats. I don't typically like HR people. This is messed up on so many levels. A company not providing parking for all employees. Some with a parking spot not being able to offer it to someone. Someone petty enough to try and make someone else have to walk to work because they have to. HR not telling that person to F off. 3 managers for 2 employees. I honestly wouldn't make it long at this company. A team with 5 people on it had 3 managers. Run. And often got sick due to bad weather. Lol, didn't need to read any further. Toby is the worst. Our is pretty much a bullshit job. I've worked with some excellent HR folks, and a few not so much. Mostly good. Somebody complained. No, nobody complained, you're just a petty HR tyrant trying to flex what little power you have. Anti-work material right here. I thought this was going the direction of you deciding instead to pay for the very expensive parking and start submitting your receipts for reimbursement. I worked in a call center, where the employee parking lot was much too small for the number of employees. Some nearby buildings had extra parking spots, so arrangements were made that they leased the spots to my company, and employees paid a low monthly fee to rent spots. Each spot was assigned to an employee. Otherwise, employees had to park along the streets or rely on public transit. I worked in the workforce management department for a while. Among many things, they handled the parking spots and vacation schedules. We loved coffee from the nearby Tim Hortons. If I wanted to go on a coffee run, and wanted to park near the building when I returned, the guy who managed the parking lots would figure out which spot would be empty because of vacation. It was a sweet arrangement. Wow. And just to be clear, if your data manager just went to HR and told him she wanted you to use her space, they had the power to tell her no. Surprised HR, or someone else, doesn't do a reverse Uno and park in the open space, since technically, anyone could park there. A 5-person team, of whom over half are managers. I was actually hoping HR had an IT issue and you walked 30 minutes to get there while they waited, getting nothing done as their deadline approached. My old job had a waiting list for its free parking lot. My friend was 1 position ahead of me on the list, i.e. she was number 54, I was number 55. She eventually got a spot, but she quit a few months later. I was sad to see her go, but really happy to be getting a spot, or so I thought. She left, and I parked in her spot the next morning. An hour later, I was hauled up in front of my boss, who screamed at me. "Why did you park there? That's not your spot." Bewildered, I said, but I was next on the list. Turned out that the company had hired a new executive and promised him the spot. Some people are truly petty. What's the point in having someone else's privilege removed? It does nothing for you and makes someone else's life a little bit worse. Haha, you and your boss foiled the office Karen. You sound whiny as fuck. You don't get sick from bad weather. You could be in an isolated house with no other humans and never get a viral sickness again. How long did it take you to write that dumb story from 6 years ago? Go outside, breathe, explore, talk to people. When I was your age I thought the world owed me everything too. Yeah, and then you found out you were wrong and now you work in the HR department making people miserable. Real hero's journey you went on there, thumbs up. I'm quite happy that HR has no power whatsoever where I live. I would just have told Ger to go. Herself. Why did no one ask the parking space? Does it like to be filled? Okay, so where's the malicious compliance? Canadian nurse, no, for parking. Too long, ADHD strikes again. OMG, this was so long-winded for a shit story. Sick due to bad weather. Either you dress bad or you wash your hands really bad, you pick one. Downvote for a terrible too long did not read. This gave me the warm fuzzies. God bless. You can't spell, who cares without HR? Do they all use the space without belts? Would have been my last day. I don't play that shit no more. The safest answer to this is people pulling their MIOTA off exchanges and using Firefly if they haven't interacted with one in a while. So he was understandably a little rusty to start the day off with a win, so I'd bet you could have spooked him if you don't let this distract you from the sun. I joke that I'm going to do great against the grappling. Holland is just here to fight people. No wonder. Michael hates Toby so much. Can you tell us the model? You don't get sick from being outside but cool. Oh great, some HR bashing again. How about you stop being a toddler with a temper tantrum and realize that this HR person was only doing her job? I would bet you $1,000 that the HR person was a lot more annoyed by the situation than you were.